Every time that we do something, no matter what it is, it has to be front page news. Do you know that? I believe it's very ridiculous that anything we do has to be front page news, but it lets you know how much they actually pay attention to what we're doing as a people, because they're highly invested in finding out our movements, what we're thinking, what we're doing. Brother Derek shared with me an article that was written out of the New York Times. I mean, a long article too, about a good 8 pages by an Eliza Shapiro on the 8th of January. Now, they were talking about black parents putting their children in Afrocentric schools and how more and more black parents are doing this as a alternative to public schools. Now, they have schools in different communities that children go to, and that's not front page news. Jewish people like Miss Shapiro here have schools that promote their, ideology, culture, etc. And that's not front page news. You have people in the Hispanic community have schools, Asian community have schools, Arab community have schools. Why isn't that front page news as well? Why? Why is that only the black children? Okay. And when you hear the term, well, they push for integration, we had segregation before, understand, white kids wasn't integrated with black children. Black children was integrated with white children. That's the way that worked. And it's still like that to this day when it comes to integration. They didn't take white folks and put them in a black school with black teachers and black everything. They did not do that. So you still have the same white children at white schools, you just have black people there. And then they have to deal with the racism that goes along with that. Black parents are finally waking up to the truth. If we are treated the way we are treated in society, okay? We have seen these same so-called teachers over and over and over discriminate against us and our children. We've seen their police officers beat our children, drag our children out of their desk, treat them like men in the school. We know about this school to prison pipeline. Where does that come from? In these public schools controlled by white folks. We're going to complain about racism and white supremacy and then give our children to you for 8 hours a day. What are we complaining for at that point, right? Every year, a black child is being suspended, criticized because of their natural hair. Why are we sending our kids to a place like that that discriminates against who they are? Why? So more and more black parents say, listen, I am not going to do that no longer. I'm going to either put my child in a school that they can be comfortable with and love who they are, or I'm going to homeschool. More and more black parents are doing this. Now, they have a school they focused on out in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, named Ember Charter School, and how the children are stating, I love myself, I love my hair, I love my skin. And that's a beautiful thing. Why? Because this society has said to hate yourself as black people, to hate your skin, to hate your hair. So you have to be reintroduced into loving yourself. And that's what black schools have to do. That is a psychological thing, because when black folks hate themselves, they act a certain way. When black folks love themselves, they act a certain way. See, when you hear these people walking around shucking and jiving all day, they don't love themselves, because I don't know one that loves themselves that's willing to do that. I haven't found one yet who loved themselves so much that they're willing just to be some little lapdog idiot in society and shuck and jive. I don't know nobody that would do something like that at all, period. Now, these schools, that's throughout the country. So the black schools throughout the country have higher rates of graduation. The children don't get into trouble. The children have higher SAT scores. The children do better in college in the black schools versus the public schools. So I look at the performance of everything when it comes to anything that I do. I don't look at just the semantics. I pay attention to the actions and results. And if the actions and results are saying that they do better at the black schools, or they're doing better being homeschooled, then that's a beautiful thing. And that's what we should do as black parents. Okay? It's our responsibility to take care of the education of our children, ours. We don't listen to nobody tell us what we should and should not do. Now, of course, the same crowd that will dog us out in public school will come in and say, oh, well, we had segregation before, and don't you think you guys are heading in the wrong direction? It would be a fool and a half if we would continue to send our children to places where they're being discriminated against, where teachers are putting black children on the ground, walking on their backs and saying this is how it would feel to be at the bottom of a slave ship. That actually happened in a New York school. We covered that. We have to be a fool to continue that behavior. Your cops going ham on our children for any little thing. We would have to be idiots to allow that to keep going on. No. And then they say, oh, well, what do we have a school that's an all white school? You have all white schools now. What are you talking about? Matter of fact, you say about neighborhoods and everything else. The moment black people come around y'all just pack up and leave. So what you talking about? Y'all practice segregation more than anybody. They got whole books about it called White Flight. So y'all the last people to talk. Don't act like y'all just cool with everybody when they come in and you just want to get along. And no, this is racism, white supremacy is practiced at every institution in this country. And black people have said, okay, that's what you want to practice? Fine. Do you. We're going to get our children away from that mess, put them in a safe space where they can be properly educated. And we have a right to do so. And we don't want to hear your mouth. Matter of fact, don't come on this thread and tell me anything about this wrong, because you'll get blocked real quickly if I catch it, at least. Because I am not in the business of listening to nobody that when the writing's on the wall, when the proof is there, when I've done story after story after story how black children are treated in these schools, and telling me that it's wrong when I see these kids are graduating at higher rates, when these children are having higher SAT scores, when these children aren't getting beat up by race soldiers in school, and being charged with things in the schoolhouse. When I don't see no school to prison pipeline in these black schools, you're right, I'm going to promote those schools. And then you had a sister with an organization called Parenting While Black, and I didn't know they had that particular organization, Parenting While Black. Now, this sister was talking about an incident that happened to her third grader, okay? And one of the white kids called her child a slave because he knew his history. And he was stating to the other child that the ancient Greeks was influenced by the ancient Egyptians and everything. He didn't like that. He called him a slave. So the white kid went home, told what happened. The parents come up there, saying what happened and saying, you know, hey, this kid's a racist, but yet he's calling, the white kid is calling the black one a slave. See, I understand. They teach racism and white supremacy at the moment they can speak, okay? They teach it to them. We don't have to endure or put up with that crap, okay? We don't have to, and we shouldn't. See, Asian communities, they stay in their area, they have their banks, their stores, their everything, and nobody goes over there complaining with them at all, okay? You see Arab communities do this. You see Hispanic communities do this. Jewish communities, all these different people do this. But when it comes to black people doing for yourself and getting in the safe space where you can learn and have a proper education, it's a problem. Black people, you have to retort with that every time. If you don't tell Asians nothing and all these other groups, then shut the hell up. Because we aren't your slaves. You have no right to tell us what to do, when to go, how to think, how to educate, or anything else. You don't have that right. We're going to do what's right for our kids because you have proven to us ever since the Brown versus the Board of Education that you don't want us in your school. You don't want us around you. The only time you want us around is go run up and down a football field or a basketball court, volleyball court, or whatever other court. That's all the time you want us around. But if we not doing that, you're treating us like crap. And I wish this same spirit that's going on in the elementary, middle, and high school move on to the collegiate level. And these brothers stop playing for these people. They're making billions of dollars off of you. You're not getting a dime of it at all. If these brothers would go and enroll themselves into the HBCUs and play them same sports they were playing already, trust me, those PWIs will get broke real quick, because those sports at the PWIs isn't carried by white athletes. It's carried by black athletes. I mean, this is the only way that we as a people could actually get in control of not only our education, but also in control of our dignity and self-respect. We got to stop making other communities rich. We have to make ourselves rich. I don't see no other group doing that but black folks. We have to stop being the perpetual slave for everybody and go on and produce our own everything for ourselves. Look at this government shutdown. If everyone truly did for self in our community, none of us would be caught up in this government shutdown. Nobody worrying about no food stamps, no welfare, no WIC, no job. Because we have our own jobs. We wouldn't worry about it. They say, hey, that's their business. We doing our own thing. And this is what everyone taught. All the great leaders taught that, doing for self. And that's why it's important. That's why I promote doing for self. And education is doing for self. We can't complain about racism and white supremacy and then send our kids in an environment where there's no black teachers. None. Like, come on, you mean tell me black women aren't getting educated, black men aren't getting educated to teach? Please. And in these public schools, they allow the black children to run wild on purpose so they can put them in prison and get charges on them. But the black schools, you put those same children there, no problems. We have to start taking more responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, for our children. It's no one else's responsibility at all to educate, to treat our children right, etc. It's not their responsibility. It's ours. And I'm glad brothers and sisters are doing this more and more and more. Now, they said the other school, Ember, that they talked about in the beginning in Bedford-Stuyvesant, they also have a few Hispanic kids that go into these schools too. So they even enrolling their children in the black schools because they see it's a better environment than dealing with public school. Because, you know, I mean, you will hear that build that wall comment. And, you know, building the wall thing, at least for them, that's more so on a racial tip. That's not national security, and we all know that. Now, the conversation of illegal immigration is one thing, but we know good and well it's racial with them. We know that. Or you'll be hearing some crap about Trump, so they don't want to hear about it. So they even go into those schools. Now, the teacher said that anybody is welcome to apply to come to the schools, but the curriculum is what the curriculum going to be. I mean, you can't really discriminate. But shout out to black people. I'm glad you guys are finally waking up. But leave me a comment and know think about this, ladies and gentlemen, about a lot of brothers and sisters putting our precious children in the Afrocentric schools. You guys keep doing this. We need to get more and more together to create these schools in every city that we're located. And we can do it in the area of unification. I know people right here in Houston have created schools. You know, we can work with them to help replicate at least their model in many places. And we don't need their banks. We don't need anything from them. We could crowdfund our own money, put that together, you know, crowdfund enough money where you could pay the teachers a salary for the year. I mean, we have to do it ourselves because the state is not going to really fund it. You know, maybe you could get a charter school, but the key is not to take any kind of funding if you don't have to from the state, so they have no kind of control except with state law in the area of education. But we need to continue this movement of educating our own. Children would be so much happier not dealing with racism and white supremacy in the schoolhouse for 8 hours. They would. And it's our responsibility and duty as parents to make sure that happens.